I came home and my dog was gone. My mom told me, we sold him. Your sister's kids needed new phones. You'll get over it. I asked once, where is he? They laughed it off. I didn't. 2 days later, I was still reeling from the words she had so casually tossed out. I opened the door, expecting the usual greeting from my dog, Jasper. The sound of his excited nails tapping against the hardwood floors was always the first thing I heard when I stepped inside. But today, there was nothing, no barking, no excited wagging of his tail, just silence. I stood there, my hand still holding the door, the weight of the silence settling heavily around me. Jasper. I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the air, but there was no answer. I called again, louder this time. Still nothing. The cold air in the room seemed to press against me, the silence growing more unbearable with each second. I stepped into the kitchen, hoping maybe he was just lying in his bed, hiding out of sight. But there was no sign of him. No dog bed in the corner. No leash hanging from the hook by the door. Just my mom casually loading dishes into the dishwasher as though nothing had changed. Mom, I said, my voice tight. Where's Jasper? She didn't look up. She didn't even pause her movements. We sold him, she replied flatly. Your sister's kids needed new phones. You'll be fine. My stomach dropped. I couldn't breathe for a moment. I stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. What do you mean you sold him? I asked, my voice cracking. Where is he? My mom didn't even blink. It's no big deal. You're not a kid anymore, Khloe. The girls needed those phones. We didn't think you'd mind. I stood there frozen, the words not quite registering. I thought I had misunderstood her, that surely this couldn't be happening. But there was no mistaking it. She said it again, so casually, as if I should be grateful for their generosity in exchanging my dog for a couple of phones. A rush of heat flooded my chest. Anger, hurt, confusion. I didn't know what to do with any of it. I turned and walked out of the kitchen without saying another word. My heart pounded in my ears as I headed towards the garage, hoping, praying that maybe my dad would have some explanation. I found him in the garage, bent over his workbench, the sound of his tools scraping against metal. He glanced up when I entered, but he didn't seem surprised. Dade, where's Jasper? I asked again, but this time the anger in my voice was unmistakable. He shrugged. Your mom figured you'd get over it. The girls really wanted those phones. Over it. Over it. My dog, the one thing that had kept me grounded, was gone, and he thought I'd just get over it. I didn't even know what to say to him. I turned and walked away before I said something I would regret. Back inside, I went straight to my room. Jasper's crate was empty. His leash hung from the doorknob, and his toys were scattered on the floor, like they'd been tossed aside without a second thought. I sat down on the bed, my mind racing, trying to piece together what had just happened. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a spur of the moment decision. This was planned. My mom had sold my dog, and they all seemed to think I'd just accept it, like it was nothing. They had always treated me like I was just a kid, like my feelings didn't matter. But this was different. They had crossed a line. I felt a wave of nausea hit me as I realized that, to them, Jasper wasn't a part of the family. He wasn't someone I loved. He was just an object to be sold when it was convenient. I was nothing more than an afterthought. I didn't go downstairs for dinner. I stayed in my room, staring at the ceiling, the weight of everything pressing down on me. The house, which had once felt like home, now felt like a foreign place. My family, The people I thought I could trust had betrayed me in a way I couldn't comprehend. But in the quiet of my room, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Not this time. Not ever again. I couldn't just sit there. I couldn't pretend that everything was okay. The moment my parents walked out of the room, I pulled my laptop onto my lap, my fingers already itching to start searching. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not this time. Not when I finally understood what they had done. I opened a browser and typed in the first search I could think of. Australian Shepherd rehoming. It felt ridiculous, like I was typing a plea into the void. What was I hoping for? Some miracle. But the more I scrolled through listings, the more my determination hardened. I had to find him. He was out there, and I knew it. Jasper. I couldn't just accept that he was gone. I couldn't. Not after everything he had meant to me. I clicked on link after link, scanning the blurry photos of dogs for anything that might be him. Hours passed. The house grew quieter. My family went about their business, pretending nothing had happened. I barely noticed them moving through the house. My mind was elsewhere. There was a moment when I thought I might stop, that maybe I should just give up. But then I saw it. The listing. A picture of a dog with bright blue eyes, the same deep brown speckles by his ears, and that white stripe down his nose. It was him. I knew it in an instant. I felt my heart lurch, my pulse racing as I clicked on the message button. I messaged them quickly, my hands shaking. Is this dog still available? I typed, my voice a whisper in the back of my mind. I couldn't believe I was doing this. But I had to. It wasn't long before the response came back. Yes, he is. We're looking for a new home for him. I didn't waste time. I'll pay for him? I typed, I'll come right now. Where are you? The reply came a moment later. We're in the city park. Meet us there. Cash only. I didn't even hesitate. I grabbed my purse, took the money I had saved from my part-time job, and stuffed it into my bag. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I wasn't sure what would happen when I got there, but I had to see him to know that he was okay, to hold him again. The drive to the park was a blur. I didn't pay attention to the streets I passed, the trees, the way the sun was starting to dip lower in the sky. All I could think about was Jasper. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. When I reached the park, I parked in the lot and got out, looking around. And then I saw them, a car with a family inside, sitting there, waiting. The man in the front seat waved me over. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. I could see him through the window. His ears shot up the moment he saw me. I swear I could hear his tail thump against the seat, even from where I stood. Jasper. I whispered, my voice trembling. I opened the door and knelt down, and just like that, he leapt out of the car and into my arms. He smelled like the park, fresh grass and dirt, but it didn't matter. He was back. He licked my face, his excitement contagious. For a moment I just sat there, my arms wrapped around him, breathing him in. It felt like a dream, like I had pulled him out of the depths of my own desperation, but he was real, and he remembered me. I'm taking you home, buddy? I whispered to him, my voice breaking. I paid them, and the family handed over the leash, their eyes dull, no emotion in their faces. They didn't know what they had given up. But I did. I knew what this dog meant to me. I knew that no one else would ever understand that bond. I got in the car, Jasper curled up next to me, his head resting on my lap. The ride back felt surreal. I couldn't stop looking at him, watching him breathe, feeling his warmth against me. I wasn't going to let him go. Not again. Not ever. When I got home, I didn't give my family the chance to speak. I opened the door, and the moment my mother saw Jasper, her face froze. Her eyes widened, and the spatula she was holding slipped from her hand, falling to the floor with a loud clatter. "You bought him back," she whispered, disbelief in her voice. "No," I said, my voice firm. "I bought back what you sold." I didn't wait for her response. I turned and walked upstairs, feeling the weight of her stare on my back. I locked the door behind me, and I didn't say a word after that. I didn't have to. Jasper curled up on the bed beside me, his soft breathing lulling me into a sense of peace I hadn't felt in days. The house was silent, but it was a different kind of silence now. I didn't need their approval anymore. I wasn't going to apologize for loving my dog. Not when they had shown me just how little they cared. As I lay there, the night falling around us, I knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The moment I opened that door, my life had shifted, and I wasn't going to let them pull me back in. The next day, everything felt different. The house seemed quieter, heavier somehow, even though nothing had really changed. My parents went about their day like nothing had happened, but I couldn't shake the tension. I could feel it hanging in the air between us, thick and suffocating. I knew they would come to me eventually. They had to. They couldn't just pretend I hadn't done what I did, that I hadn't brought Jasper back. But they didn't come that night. They didn't confront me. They didn't even apologize. It wasn't until the following morning that things really started to unravel. I woke up to the sound of muffled voices downstairs. My parents were talking, but I couldn't make out the words. I rolled out of bed, my heart still pounding in my chest, and went to the door. "Khloe, where's your head at?" My mom's voice echoed up the stairs, sharp and demanding. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I wasn't ready to face them yet. Not when the anger inside me was still simmering. Not when I was still trying to make sense of everything. But as I stood there, listening to them downstairs, something inside me snapped. I couldn't let them keep controlling me like this. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. I walked downstairs slowly, trying to steady my breath. The kitchen was as normal as it ever was. My mom standing at the stove, flipping pancakes, her usual forced cheer trying to mask the tension between us. My dad was sitting at the table, pretending to read the newspaper, but clearly waiting for me to speak. When they saw me, there was a moment of silence. My mother's smile faltered for a second, then she straightened up, setting the spatula down. "Look, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you can't just come in here and—" My mom started, her voice tight, but I cut her off. "You sold him," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the fury that threatened to rise. "You sold my dog, Mom. My dog. And you didn't even think to ask me about it." She looked at me for a second, her eyes narrowing. "I already told you, Khloe. Your sister's kids needed new phones. You'll get over it." I clenched my jaw, trying to hold back the anger that surged through me. It was like she didn't even care. Like she didn't even see me. I didn't want to yell, I didn't want to make it worse. But the more I thought about it, the more the words slipped out. "You don't get it, do you?" I said, my voice breaking for a moment. "This isn't about phones. This is about you thinking I'd just accept it. You thought I'd just be okay with it. But I'm not." I could see it then, the way she stiffened, like she didn't want to hear it, like she didn't want to face what she had done. But it didn't matter. I wasn't backing down this time. "I'm done," I said, turning to my father. "I'm done pretending like everything's fine. You don't get to treat me like this anymore. You don't get to decide what's mine and what's not." There was a pause. My father didn't say anything. He just sat there, his eyes focused on me for a long moment before he let out a long sigh. "You're overreacting, Khloe," he said quietly, his voice barely audible. "It's just a dog." I felt something snap inside me. I couldn't take it anymore. This wasn't just about a dog. This was about everything. This was about how they had taken from me, how they had used me for their own gain without even thinking twice. "Don't you dare tell me what's just a dog," I said, my voice trembling now. "You don't get to make me feel small anymore." I turned and walked out of the kitchen, my hands shaking at my sides. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, but I couldn't stay there. Not anymore. Not when they didn't see me, not when they had no idea how much I had given up for them. I went back upstairs and locked my door, feeling like I was finally doing something for myself. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to hide, like I had to apologize for my feelings. I had nothing to apologize for. They were the ones who owed me that. As I sat on my bed, I looked over at Jasper, curled up in his bed beside me, the sound of his breathing steady and comforting. For the first time in a long time, I felt calm, but I knew this wasn't over. I knew my family wouldn't let it go. And I wasn't going to back down either. I had already made up my mind. This was just the beginning. The next few hours passed in a haze. I sat in my room, staring at the empty walls, my mind racing. The weight of what I had just done, the bank account, the transfer, the decision to take control of my life, felt like both a burden and a relief. I was free from their grasp, but at the same time I was terrified of what would happen next. My parents didn't know yet, but I knew they would find out soon. They wouldn't let it go. I glanced over at Jasper, curled up on my bed, his soft breathing steady and comforting. His presence was a small piece of peace in the chaos of my thoughts. He didn't care about money or what had just happened. He only cared about me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I mattered too. I took a deep breath and stood up, walking over to my closet. I wasn't sure what I was doing next, but I knew I couldn't stay here. Not in this house. Not under the same roof as them. They had made it clear that I didn't have a place in their world, that I was just an afterthought, a resource to be used. I wasn't going to keep playing that part. Not anymore. The sound of footsteps outside my door broke my thoughts, followed by the sharp knock. It was my mother. "Khloe, we need to talk," she called out, her voice tight but controlled. "Open the door." I didn't respond. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to face them again, not with everything still so raw. I stayed silent, sitting back down on the bed and holding Jasper close. "I know you're in there," she said, her voice rising. "You can't just ignore us forever. Open the door." I wanted to yell, to tell her to go away, to leave me alone. But I didn't. I just sat there, listening to the pounding in my chest, feeling the walls closing in on me. I knew she wouldn't stop. I finally stood up and opened the door, but I didn't look her in the eyes. I couldn't. She stepped inside, her face a mask of frustration. "What the hell, Khloe?" she demanded. "You think this is some kind of game? You think you can just take our money and walk away without any consequences?" I shook my head, the anger bubbling up inside me. "It's not your money, Mom," I said quietly. It's mine. And I'm done letting you take it. Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought she might lash out. But then she took a breath and stepped back, crossing her arms. You're making a huge mistake. You can't just leave. You don't have anywhere to go. You'll come crawling back. I wasn't sure why, but that comment cut deeper than anything else she had said. It wasn't just about the money or the dog anymore. It was about the way she saw me, the way they all saw me. Like I was a failure, like I would always need them to survive. I'm not crawling back, I said, my voice steady. I'm leaving, Mom. I'm done. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the anger shift to something else. Disappointment, maybe, or something worse. She opened her mouth to say something, but I stopped her before she could. No, I said, shaking my head. You don't get to talk me out of this. I'm not your responsibility anymore. I don't need you. She didn't say anything for a moment, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to understand. But then her expression hardened, and she turned on her heel. You're making a mistake, Khloe, she muttered. You'll regret this. Won't, I said, watching her walk out of the room. I closed the door behind her and leaned against it, my hands shaking. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was doing something right. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. Not with money, not with guilt, not with anything. I looked down at Jasper, who was still curled up on the bed, watching me with his soft, trusting eyes. You and me, buddy, I said softly, reaching down to scratch behind his ears. We're going to be okay. For the first time in a long time, I believed it. The next morning was different. For the first time in days, the house was eerily quiet. My parents, still seething from the night before, had avoided me all day. They didn't come to my room. They didn't try to speak to me, and I didn't go looking for them either. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Maybe an apology. Maybe some acknowledgement of how they had treated me. But nothing came. The silence that followed felt almost heavier than the words we'd exchanged the night before. I stayed in my room most of the day, figuring out what to do next. I had to leave. That much was clear, but the question was where would I go? How would I start over with nothing but the money I'd saved up and a dog who needed me just as much as I needed him? As the day wore on, I felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on me again. They hadn't said it outright, but I could tell they expected me to cave. They expected me to come crawling back, apologize, and beg for forgiveness. They always thought I would come back. They always thought I was the weak one, but I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts. I needed to figure out where I was going to stay. I didn't have many options. I could go to a hotel, but that wasn't ideal. I had already drained my savings for the month, and I wasn't about to dip into my emergency fund. That's when I remembered Tessa. She had always been kind to me at work, offering a listening ear when things at home got tough. We weren't close, but she had made it clear that if I ever needed a place to stay, she would be there for me. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if it would be awkward. I didn't want to burden her, but the thought of staying here in this house any longer was unbearable. I texted her, my fingers shaking as I typed. Hey, Tessa, I know this is random, but is it okay if I crash at your place for a little while? I just need somewhere to go. It's a long story. I didn't expect an immediate response, but within minutes, my phone lit up. Of course, Khloe. You can stay as long as you need. The couch is yours. Relief washed over me like a wave, and for the first time in days, I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I wasn't alone. I had someone on my side. I grabbed a duffel bag and started packing. I didn't have much, just the essentials. Clothes, toiletries, some cash, and of course, Jasper's things. He was the one thing that had kept me grounded, the one thing that reminded me of what real love and loyalty felt like. As I packed his leash and his favorite toy, I realized how much he meant to me. He wasn't just a dog. He was family. The house was still silent when I walked out, and I didn't even look back. I didn't have to. They had already made it clear how they saw me. I wasn't going to let their bitterness, their anger, their manipulation hold me back anymore. The drive to Tessa's apartment was quick, and by the time I pulled up, the weight on my shoulders had started to lift. It wasn't perfect. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing something for myself. I rang the doorbell, and Tessa opened the door with a warm smile. "Come on in," she said, stepping aside. "I'll get you settled." I stepped inside, and the apartment smelled like fresh coffee and clean linen. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I wasn't looking for luxury, just a place where I could breathe, where I could start over. "Thanks, Tessa," I said, my voice a little shaky. "I really appreciate this." "Don't mention it," she said with a smile. "You can stay as long as you need. And, you can talk about whatever you want. I'm here for you." I nodded, but for the first time in days, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I wasn't in that house anymore. I wasn't under their control. Jasper jumped up on the couch beside me, his tail wagging happily as he settled in. I stroked his fur and smiled. This was my new beginning. The first few days at Tessa's place felt surreal. It was quiet, peaceful, nothing like the chaos I had left behind. I kept expecting to hear my parents' voices, feel the weight of their eyes on me, but there was nothing. The silence was different now. It wasn't the suffocating silence of my family's house. It was a calm, welcoming kind of quiet. I could breathe here. I could think without the constant pressure of their expectations weighing me down. Tessa was kind, but I could tell she was unsure of how much to push. She respected my space, letting me settle in without asking too many questions. But every time I caught her looking at me, I could see the concern in her eyes. She wanted to know what had happened, why I was here, but she didn't pry. She let me open up when I was ready. The evenings were the hardest. I would lie in bed, listening to Jasper's soft breathing, staring up at the ceiling. It was during those moments of stillness that the weight of everything I'd left behind hit me the hardest. I wasn't sure if I was running from my family or from myself. I knew leaving had been the right decision, but it didn't make it any easier. I tried not to think about what was happening at home. I knew my parents were furious, but I had no intention of going back. I had to remind myself that they would never see me for who I truly was. They would always see me as the easy target, the one they could control and manipulate. And that wasn't something I was willing to accept anymore. One evening, as I was sitting on the couch with Jasper curled up beside me, Tessa came into the room, her face serious, but gentle. "Khloe," she said softly, sitting down across from me, "I know this is hard, but you can't keep hiding from everything. You have to face it. You can't just shut down." I didn't look at her at first. I couldn't. The idea of facing my parents, of confronting everything I'd left behind, felt impossible. I was terrified, but I knew Tessa was right. I couldn't run forever. I know, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. But I don't know where to start. I don't know how to fix it. Tessa gave me a small, understanding smile. You don't have to fix everything right away. Just take it one step at a time. You've already taken the hardest step by getting out of there. I nodded slowly, but the fear still gnawed at me. The fear that if I didn't fix things with my family, everything would fall apart. But I couldn't keep letting them control my life. I couldn't keep pretending that their love came with strings attached. I don't want to go back, I said, finally looking up at Tessa. But I also don't know what to do without them. Tessa's expression softened. You don't need them to be whole. You're stronger than you think. And you're not alone. You have people who care about you. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since I'd gotten here. Tessa wasn't family, but in that moment, she felt like it. She had given me a safe space, a place to rebuild myself, and for that, I was grateful beyond words. I don't know what the future holds, I admitted, my voice breaking slightly. But for the first time, I'm starting to think that maybe that's okay. Tessa nodded, her smile warm. You're going to be okay. And when you're ready, you'll figure out the rest. But you're here now, and that's enough. I took a deep breath, the weight in my chest easing just a little. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel completely lost. There was a long way to go, but maybe, just maybe, I could finally start healing. That night, I lay in bed with Jasper beside me, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing, and for the first time in days, I allowed myself to close my eyes and just rest. I didn't have all the answers, but I was taking things one step at a time. And that, I realized, was all I could do. In the silence of my new life, I began to see a future that wasn't defined by the expectations of others. It was mine to shape, and I was ready to do it. A few days later, things took a turn. It started with a message. I didn't even have to open it to know who it was from. The number on the screen was unmistakable. My mom. The message was short, cold. We need to talk. This is ridiculous, Khloe. You can't just leave like this. I felt my heart tighten in my chest. My first instinct was to delete it, to block the number and shut them out completely. But I didn't. Instead, I stared at the words for a moment, feeling the weight of everything I'd been running from. They didn't get it. They didn't understand why I had to leave. And as much as I hated to admit it, part of me wanted to know what they would say. What kind of excuse they'd offer this time. I locked my phone and set it down on the table beside me. I couldn't respond yet. I wasn't ready, not until I could think clearly. The next morning, my phone buzzed again, this time with a message from my dad. Khloe, you can't keep running from us. We need to have a conversation. Your actions are tearing this family apart. Tearing the family apart. Those words hit me harder than I expected. They always turned it around on me, always made it seem like it was my fault. But I knew better now. I knew that no matter how they twisted it, this wasn't my fault. I hadn't torn the family apart. They had. I sat on the couch, staring at the message, the weight of my decision pressing against my chest. Part of me wanted to respond, to tell them how I felt, to finally lay it all out there. But I wasn't sure I could say the things I needed to say. I wasn't sure it would even matter. I picked up the phone again and opened the message from my mom. This time, the words were more desperate. Khloe, we love you. Please come home. You don't understand what you've done. This is not how we raise a family. I could feel the manipulation, the guilt trip, the subtle demand that I come back and apologize. It was always the same with them. It was never about what I needed or how I felt. It was always about what they wanted. I tossed my phone onto the couch and leaned back. I had made my decision. I wasn't going back. No matter how hard they tried to make me feel guilty, no matter how much they pushed, I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay when I was suffocating under their control. The phone buzzed again. This time it was from my sister. "Khloe, I'm really upset with you. You've ruined everything. You're overreacting." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. They were all in on it, every single one of them. The same excuses, the same demands. They didn't care how I felt. They only cared about themselves. I stared at the message for a long time, the anger building inside me. It wasn't about the dog anymore. It wasn't about the money or the arguments. It was about everything they had taken from me. My childhood, my sense of self, my peace of mind. I took a deep breath and opened the message from my mom one last time. I had to respond. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to draw a line in the sand. They had crossed it. And I wasn't going to let them keep walking all over me. I typed my response slowly, carefully choosing my words. "I'm not coming back. I'm done being a pawn in your game. You didn't listen to me, and you didn't respect me. I'm not your scapegoat anymore." I hit send and put my phone down, letting out a long sigh. I was shaking, but I knew I had done the right thing. The silence that followed felt deafening. For a moment, I almost wished I could take it back. But I didn't. A few hours passed, and I was sitting in the living room with Jasper, his head resting on my lap. The phone buzzed again. I didn't pick it up right away. I wasn't ready for whatever it was going to say. When I finally looked, it was a text from my dad. "I don't know who you are anymore, Khloe. You've changed." I stared at the message for a long time, feeling the sting of it, but I didn't respond. I didn't have to. I wasn't the one who had changed. I was the one who had finally found my voice. And that was something they could never take from me. The days that followed felt like a blur. My life with my family had been in a constant cycle of manipulation and guilt, but now, here, everything was different. I was in control of my own space for the first time. Tessa had been nothing but supportive, but I knew that eventually, the silence would end. My parents would never stop trying to fix what I had broken by leaving. A week passed before I got the call. It wasn't from my mom. It wasn't from my dad. It wasn't even from my sister. It was from my Aunt Betty. The phone rang late one evening, just as I was getting comfortable on the couch with Jasper by my side. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, the number unfamiliar. I hesitated for only a moment before answering. "Khloe." Betty's voice came through the line, firm but gentle. "It's Betty." I straightened up, surprised to hear from her. "Aunt Betty, hi." I wasn't sure what to expect. Aunt Betty had always been the quieter one at family gatherings, but there was something about her voice now that made me sit up straighter. "What's going on?" "I know what happened with your parents," she said, cutting straight to the point. "And I know they've been trying to reach you. But what I want to know, Khloe, is what you're planning to do next. Are you going to let them keep pushing you, or are you ready to stand up to them once and for all?" Her words hit me harder than I expected. "I don't know what you mean," I said, though deep down I knew exactly what she was asking. "I've already made my decision." Betty was silent for a moment. Then you know what needs to happen next. It's time to make them face what they've done. And you don't have to do it alone. I paused, taking in what she was saying. I had left. I had taken control of my own life. But facing my parents again, after everything, felt impossible. I knew it had to happen, but I wasn't sure I was strong enough to handle it. Not yet. You're not alone, Betty continued. I'll be there with you. You don't have to do this on your own, Khloe. We'll take this one step at a time. There was something in her voice, something steady and confident, that made me believe her. Aunt Betty wasn't just talking about handling my parents. She was talking about my future, about me standing up for myself once and for all. I'll be there when you're ready, she said, her tone softening. You just let me know. We hung up soon after, but I didn't put my phone down. I sat there, staring at it for a long time, realizing that Betty was right. I had been running for so long, avoiding the hard conversations. But running had only brought me so far. If I wanted to move on, truly move on, I had to face them. I had to let them know that this was it. That I wasn't coming back, no matter how hard they tried. The next few days were filled with mixed emotions. The freedom I felt in Tessa's apartment was comforting, but there was also an underlying tension. I wasn't sure what would happen if I confronted my parents, but I couldn't keep hiding forever. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving a point. It was about my own peace of mind, about reclaiming the power they had taken from me for so long. One afternoon, a message from Aunt Betty popped up on my phone. I've arranged everything. They're expecting us. I didn't hesitate this time. I knew what I had to do. When we arrived at my parents' house, I could feel my heart racing in my chest. But Aunt Betty was there, standing beside me, her calm presence a steady anchor. She knocked on the door without hesitation, her confidence giving me the strength I hadn't realized I needed. My mom opened the door, her face falling when she saw us standing there. Her expression hardened, but she didn't say anything. She just stepped aside, allowing us in. Sit down, Aunt Betty said firmly, her voice commanding respect. We're not here to argue. We're here to have a conversation. And this time you'll listen. My dad was already sitting at the kitchen table, his hands folded in front of him. He looked up, a flicker of guilt in his eyes, before he quickly masked it with a scowl. Aunt Betty didn't wait for them to speak. What happened, happened. You can't change it. But you will listen to Khloe, and you will understand why she's made the choices she has. If you can't do that, then you're not family anymore. I watched my parents, their expressions shifting between anger and disbelief. But Aunt Betty was right. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about me, and I wasn't going to be afraid of them anymore. Khloe, Aunt Betty said, nodding toward me, tell them. I took a deep breath and looked at my parents, feeling the weight of everything I had carried for so long. You sold my dog. You drained my bank account. You've used me, manipulated me, and expected me to just take it. I'm done. I'm not your punching bag. I'm not your backup anymore. The room was silent for a moment, the weight of my words hanging in the air. My mom's face turned pale, her lips trembling. My dad looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Aunt Betty's voice held him back. You can't treat people like that. I continued, my voice steady now. Not family, not anyone. I've given you everything and you've taken it. But I'm done. I'm done letting you control me. Aunt Betty stepped forward, her presence commanding. If you want to stay in this family, you'll start respecting Khloe. She's done being your doormat. And if you can't do that, then we're done here. The silence in the room was deafening, but it was also liberating. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to apologize. I didn't have to explain myself anymore. I stood up, ready to leave, but Aunt Betty placed a hand on my shoulder. "This is your moment, Khloe," she said softly. "You've done more than most would ever have the courage to do." We left my parents' house without another word. As I walked out, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't just walking away from them. I was walking into my own life, finally free from the chains they had wrapped around me for so long. For the first time in years, I felt at peace,